Oh, hello. Welcome to the 2013 Hundie Challenge. Today we're going to be discussing Midnight in America by Sal Bass Rushdie. Dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-dee-doo-doo-dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-dee-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo. This book was fascinating. I would definitely recommend it. Definitely check it out. It's maybe the third or the fourth book on this list that had to do with India. That actually took place in India. Definitely Passage to India. I think A House for Mr. Biswas. That was in Trinidad, but had to do with the Trinidadian Indians. And Kim. And of those, I want to say this is the only one that was first person from the perspective of an Indian. And except for A House for Mr. Biswas, which was by an actual Trinidadian, this is also the only one that was written by an actual Indian, which is Salman Rushdie. Salman Rushdie, what I know of him is basically, I guess, what everybody picks up. He wrote the Satanic Verses. He had a fatwa against him back in the day. I don't think I even knew offhand that he was Indian. I mean, I knew there are a lot of Indian Muslims. I think it's something like the second or third largest Muslim country in the world. I'm sorry, I'm full of nonsensical facts today, or half-baked facts, but I know there is a huge Muslim population in India, despite the fact that what used to be India broke up into India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, presumably because Pakistan was where all the Muslims would go, and India was where all the Hindus would go, but it didn't really work out that way, and there's still large minorities of both in either country. So Midnight's Children is about that. It covers a pretty wide swath of the 20th century from I want to say from the 30s or maybe the 20s when he's talking about his grandfather, into the 70s. And it covers from colonial rule to self-rule to the breakup with Pakistan to the breakup with Bangladesh. And it does so in a sort of a metaphorical sense. I've heard the term magical realism used before, and I never really understood it. But if I had to take a guess, if I was to go on Wikipedia right now and looked up magical realism, I'm guessing Midnight's Children would come up. So it's something where it could be magic, but it could also just kind of be in the head of the narrator. I'm not really explaining myself very well because I'm either just burned out on doing this challenge, or I just didn't do enough research on this book because I don't research these books, I just read them. So I'm sorry if I'm not explaining myself well. But anyway, point being, the conceit of this story is that the main character, Salim, was born at midnight on the Indian Independence Day from colonial rule. And that everybody in India that was born at that time, in that hour, had magical powers. So I'm guessing this is some kind of a metaphor. But in the text of the book, he makes it out like it's literal. He makes it out like Salim can kind of sense the other Midnight's children. And then each of the other Midnight's children has some kind of power, like one can change genders, or some have flight, and some have all kinds of unusual magical abilities. And the further away you get from midnight, the less powerful you are. So I guess if you were born at 12:59, you would just be some kind of circus freak. But if you were born right at 12 midnight, like Salim was, you have the strongest powers. So this is kind of in the background for most of the book, and you kind of believe that it is a delusion or something that he made up to kind of cover the trauma of the wars with Pakistan, and all the traumatic experiences of his life in India, reaching independence and beyond. He was also switched at birth, so he wasn't really Salim Aziz. I think he wasn't even really a Muslim if he had ended up with his real family. So that I also took to be kind of a metaphor. It was really complicated. This was a really deep book that probably requires closer consideration than I have given it, and I apologize for that. I do recommend that you read it, because definitely coming from an interesting perspective about history that I don't know, and in a style of magical realism, and I may even be misusing that word. There may be an entirely other style that I should be calling it, but in any case, this was a really different book than what I'm used to. So, because Salim was switched at birth, he also has this double, Shiva, who is the villain of the piece, because he's also a Midnight's Children. He also has the powers. He should have had Salim's life, and Salim should have had his. And Shiva was a street rat who grew up to be an important Pakistani military official. I think ultimately Salim ends up in Pakistan. In any case, it was all very complex, and like I said, a lot of it was metaphorical and not necessarily to be taken at face value. But so all this stuff about the Midnight's Children is in the background for a while, and you take it as just kind of a funny little delusion that he has, until finally you get to the end, and the state rounds up all of the Midnight's Children using Salim's supposed power, and castrates and hysterectomizes them all so they can't reproduce, and then does whatever kind of horrible surgery to take away their magic powers. So, like they said, like the one that could switch genders had a hysterectomy and a castration, or like, Salim had his nose taken off because that was the source of his power, and it became really this grotesque ending about kind of human rights violations, and it raises the question of, who was Rushdie actually talking about here? Was he talking about, rounding up dissidents, or, religious minorities, or was he saying that we all have the power to change, we all have the potential power to change the world, but due to the government, when the government is corrupt enough, it cuts that power off. It was a very disturbing ending, taken at face value, and even if you dig into the metaphor, it's in a way even more disturbing. I don't know what to tell you. I feel like this is the kind of book you could write a thesis about, so I apologize for my kind of ham-fisted commentary. But there you have it. Go ahead, check it out on your own. Very good book. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.